Marka Ragnos. Before the rule of two reduced the Sith to shadows, they were an empire, and for more than a century, Marka Ragnos ruled it. Born from Sith and Dark Jedi bloodlines, he claimed the title of Dark Lord by beheading a rival named Simus in open combat, then spent 100 years doing something almost no Sith managed, not overextending. He knew the Galactic Republic existed, and chose to leave it alone, pitting internal rivals against each other rather than fighting the wars they wanted him to fight. His weapon was a Sith sword concealed inside his scepter, a detail that says everything about him. His death triggered the chaos he had spent a century preventing. Rivals Naga Sato and Ludo Kresh immediately began fighting over his throne, and Ragnos' ghost had to appear over his own tomb to tell them both to stop. Neither listened. He refused to stay dead. 1,000 years later, his spirit appeared between Exar Kun and Ulic Chel Droma, declared Kun the new Dark Lord of the Sith, and launched the Great Sith War. Thousands of years after that, a cult nearly resurrected him using his own scepter as a force-draining weapon. Only the Jedi Knight Jaden Korr stopped it, driving Ragnos back into his tomb on Korriban. Some presences are too powerful to stay buried. Ajunta Pall. Every Sith in this video owes their title to a single moment on Korriban. Ajunta Pall created that moment. He was a Jedi Master whose obsession with Sith alchemy, the dark side art of shaping life, brought him into open war with the Jedi Order. The 100-Year Darkness ended when his forces were defeated and exiled. The survivors found Korriban, a desert world of red-skinned Force-sensitive beings who also called themselves Sith. Pall outmaneuvered the native king through his own second-in-command, beheaded him personally, and was mistaken for a god. The first Sith Empire was born. If this kind of lore is what you came for, subscribing takes 2 seconds and means everything. He founded an empire, died, and his ghost lingered in his tomb for millennia, watching his successors murder each other in exactly the ways he had warned against. When the amnesiac Jedi Revan entered that tomb during the Jedi Civil War, Pall confessed his regret and was convinced to release his hatred and become one with the Force. The founder of Sith civilization found peace by surrendering everything he had built. Naga Sato. The Great Hyperspace War should not have been close. The Sith Empire was a fraction of the Republic's size. But Naga Sato had a gift that nearly made the difference. Illusion on a scale nobody had imagined. From inside a Sith meditation sphere, he could project phantom armies across light years simultaneously, making a modest force appear unstoppable. When Republic explorers Gav and Jory Daragon crashed onto Korriban during Marka Ragnos' funeral, Sato staged a false Republic attack, outmaneuvered Ludo Kresh, and claimed the title of Dark Lord. He planted a tracking device on the Daragon's ship and followed it into the heart of the galaxy. The strategy nearly worked until Gav Daragon, appalled by the devastation he had helped cause, fired directly on Sato's meditation sphere and shattered his concentration. The phantom armies dissolved. The Republic rallied. Sato fled to Yavin 4, placed himself in suspended animation, and waited 6 centuries before the fallen Jedi Freedon Nad found him, drained his knowledge, and killed him. Ludo Kresh. History rarely remembers the ones who were right. Ludo Kresh spent his entire career arguing that the Sith Empire should stay out of Republic space, that the Jedi were too powerful, that overextension would be catastrophic. He was correct on every count. He was outmaneuvered by Naga Sato at every turn, faked his own death and humiliation, and returned after the Great Hyperspace War to find exactly the wreckage he had predicted. He gathered his forces and declared himself the true Dark Lord, only for one of Sato's pilots to make a suicide run into his flagship. Kresh died having been right about everything. Exar Kun. Exar Kun did not fall to the dark side gradually. He sprinted toward it the moment he realized no one could stop him, and he was not wrong about that until the very end. Trained by Jedi Master Vodo Siosk Boss on Dantooine, Kun pursued the knowledge of the fallen Sith Lord Freedon Nad, found his tomb on Desun, and emerged from Yavin 4's ancient Massassi temples as a fully realized Sith Lord with an army of devoted warriors and Sith alchemy no one alive had practiced in centuries. When his path crossed Ulic Chel Droma's on Empress Teta, the ghost of Marka Ragnos appeared and declared Kun the new Dark Lord, Chel Droma his shadow hand. The Great Sith War of 3,996 years before the Battle of Yavin began. He sent converted Jedi back to murder their own masters. He killed the Republic's Supreme Chancellor on Coruscant. He detonated a supernova in the Kron Drift that destroyed the great Jedi library world of Ossus. Betrayed by Keldroma and surrounded by a Jedi armada on Yavin 4, he performed a final ritual, draining every Massassi warrior in his temples to imprison his own spirit in the stone. He survived as a disembodied presence for 4,000 years, until Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy was built on those same grounds and a combined effort of apprentices finally extinguished him. Ulic Cheldroma. Ulic Cheldroma's fall is the most honest kind in Sith history. It made complete sense from the inside. His master was killed by the Krath cult. He volunteered to infiltrate them, certain he was strong enough to resist. He was not. The Krath's leader had him poisoned with a rage-inducing compound that eroded his defenses over time, combined with isolation and grief. By the time his fellow Jedi came for him, he attacked them. He killed the Krath's co-ruler and took his place. When Marka Ragnos' spirit branded him Shadow Hand, he accepted it fully. As Exar Kun's second in command, Cheldroma raided shipyards at Farost and walked out with 300 warships. His undoing was his brother Kay, killed by Ulic's own hand. The Jedi Nomi Sunrider severed his Force connection permanently. Stripped of the dark side and carrying his brother's death, he gave up Kun's location and spent the rest of his life in exile on Renvar. He was killed years later by a treasure hunter wanting notoriety. In the moment of his death, the Force opened to him again, and he became one with it. Darth Revan. No one in the Old Republic era covers more distance than Darth Revan, Jedi hero, Sith conqueror, amnesiac soldier, redeemed knight, and finally a prisoner for 300 years. He defied the Jedi Council to lead Republic forces in the Mandalorian Wars, winning at Malachor 5 with the mass shadow generator. Then he and Malak followed the trail of whoever had pushed the Mandalorians into Republic space, arrived at the hidden Sith Empire on Dromund Kaas, and were enslaved by the Sith Emperor. Turned to the dark side and sent back as advance agents. They eventually broke free, found the ancient Rakatan Starforged superweapon capable of building warships at speed no shipyard could match, and launched the Jedi Civil War. A Jedi ambush and Malak's betrayal left him comatose. Bastila Shan saved his life, and the Council wiped his memory, setting him to work as a Republic soldier with no idea who he had been. The memories returned. He defeated Malak on the Starforge and destroyed it, welcomed back as the prodigal knight, then left again, alone, to confront the Sith Emperor still waiting in the dark. He failed, was captured, and spent 3 centuries imprisoned on Dromund Kaas, while the enemy he had tried to stop grew strong enough to return. Darth Malak built his entire legacy on one act of betrayal, and spent years afterward trying to convince himself it had been strength rather than desperation. Born Alec, he was Revan's closest companion from the start, fighting alongside him through the Mandalorian Wars and the journey to Dromund Kaas that ended with both of them Sith. As Revan's apprentice, he lost his lower jaw to Revan's lightsaber during an earlier power struggle and wore a metal jaw guard ever after. When the Jedi ambushed Revan's flagship, Malak fired on it. If the Jedi didn't kill Revan, the explosion would. He declared himself Dark Lord regardless. His prosecution of the Jedi Civil War was cruder than Revan's. He bombarded Terrace from orbit, killing millions to eliminate one problem. He drained captured Jedi aboard the Starforge to make himself nearly impossible to defeat. When Revan, memory restored, newly retrained, came for him, Revan freed the captive Jedi rather than matching Malak directly. Without borrowed power, Malak fell. He died wondering whether his choices had been inevitable. One of the few Sith Lords who went to his death with something like self-awareness. If you feel that pull to keep going deeper, subscribing right now means you never miss what comes next. Darth Traya. She had been betrayed by the Jedi, betrayed by her own students, stripped of the Force, and left with nothing but a question she could not stop asking. What if the Force itself was the problem? Darth Traya, born Kreia, was the philosopher of the Sith Triumvirate and the most dangerous of the 3. She had been a Jedi historian who trained Revan and was exiled by the Council when he fell, as if she bore responsibility for a student's choices. Her search brought her to Malachor 5, where the ruins of the Traya Academy and its Sith texts overwhelmed her. She became Darth Traya, Lord of Betrayal, and took 2 apprentices. Darth Sion, held together by hatred, and Darth Nihilus, a Malachor survivor whose hunger had made him barely human. Together they formed the Sith Triumvirate. Then Sion and Nihilus stripped her of the Force and exiled her, proving her thesis about every relationship. She found the Jedi exile Mitra Surik, attached herself as teacher, and engineered the deaths of Nihilus and the last surviving Jedi Masters. Her goal was to destroy the Force entirely, To sever the galaxy from the thing that kept producing Jedi and Sith to tear it apart, Surik killed her on Malachor 5. In her final moments, Traya predicted the future for the woman who had just ended her. She died on the planet that had made her purpose, incomplete. Darth Sion. He should have died 100 times. He refused to acknowledge it. Darth Sion, Lord of Pain, was a body held together not by life, but by hatred. His flesh was decayed, his bones fractured, his skin cracked and gray. What kept him standing was his refusal to die, channeled through the dark side with an intensity that turned his agony into fuel. Surviving the Jedi Civil War's collapse on Korriban, he made his way to Malachor 5, where Darth Traya recognized something singular in this unkillable warrior and trained him. He and Nihilus eventually betrayed her, then pursued the first Jedi Purge separately, Sion hunting surviving Jedi personally across the galaxy one by one, while the Order came terrifyingly close to extinction. Meetra Surik defeated him twice in combat. Both times he rose again. On Malachor 5, she finally understood. She stopped trying to kill him and started talking. She asked whether the endless pain had been worth it. She told him Traya had never respected him. She offered peace. Sion, who had endured unimaginable suffering by refusing to surrender to death for years, considered the quiet of actually dying and decided it was something he could accept. He chose to stop. His body, no longer forced together by hatred, collapsed. Darth Nihilus, he was not a Sith Lord in any conventional sense. He was a wound in the Force, a void so consuming that life drained away in his presence without anything resembling a decision on his part. He survived the Battle of Malachor 5 when the mass shadow generator fractured the planet, and whatever had made him a person was replaced by a hunger with no bottom. Darth Traya found him in the wreckage, recognized him as something unprecedented in Sith history, and took him as an apprentice alongside Darth Sion. He became Darth Nihilus, Lord of Hunger. He and Sion eventually betrayed Traya and took the Triumvirate. Without her guidance, there was nothing between Nihilus and his appetite. He pulled the warship Ravager from Malachor's gravity well with raw Force will, drained its crew of their humanity, and led a fleet toward the largest concentrations of Force energy he could locate. His most devastating act was the consumption of Qatar, a planet where surviving Jedi had gathered in secret. He arrived in orbit. Every living thing on the surface died, not from weapons, but from him. 50 Jedi Masters among them. Meetra Surik, aided by the Miraluka Visas Mar who shared a Force bond with Nihilus, confronted him above Telos 4 and drove enough into the wound that it collapsed inward. He had been more a force of nature than a person for years. In the end, he was simply gone. Darth Vitiate. Every other Sith Lord in this video pursued power. Darth Vitiate, born Tenebrae, pursued something that made power look trivial: permanence. He wanted to be the last living thing in the galaxy, and he came closer than anyone who faced him wanted to admit. Born in 5,113 years before the Battle of Yavin, the illegitimate child of a Sith Lord, Tenebrae was killing with the Force by age 6, murdered his father at 10, and controlled his home world by 13. Marka Ragnos evaluated this child and immediately granted him Sith Lord status, the response of a powerful man encountering something that frightened him. Vitiate sat out the Great Hyperspace War entirely, then summoned the 8,000 surviving Sith Lords to his world under the pretense of a ritual against the Republic. He enslaved them all simultaneously and channeled their power into a 10-day working that drained every living thing on the planet. The world became a dead husk. Vitiate became immortal. He led the survivors on a 20-year exodus to Drahman Khas, building their dependence on him with every crisis, and constructed his reconstituted empire in secret. Over 1,000 years later, it returned and fought the Great Galactic War. Through every conflict, Vitiate operated behind possessed host bodies, retreating into consciousness when those bodies fell, returning each time more patient. He also wore a third identity as the Eternal Emperor Valkorion, secretly ruling the civilization of Zakul in the unknown regions. His final destruction required a champion shaped by years of direct opposition. He spent over 1,300 years in existence and came closer to actual godhood than anyone should have permitted. Darth Malgus. Darth Malgus wanted to be the Sith warrior who finally destroyed the Republic for good, and the people he served kept deciding not to do that. Born Veradun on Dromund Kaas around 3,700 years before the Battle of Yavin, trained at the Sith Academy and eventually under the Master Vindican whom he later killed, Malgus was a frontline warrior of exceptional ability who developed a genuine personal attachment, almost unthinkable by Sith standards, to a Twi'lek woman named Elena Daru, who fought beside him through his campaigns. His defining act was the sacking of Coruscant in 3,653 years before the Battle of Yavin. He led Sith warriors into the Jedi Temple, killed its guardian Master Ven Zalo in a duel that became legendary, and the temple fell. The Imperial fleet moved on Coruscant, and the Republic delegation signed the treaty on Imperial terms. Malgus expected this to be the Republic's end. The Dark Council ordered the Empire to withdraw. He stood in the ruins of the Jedi Temple and was told to go home, and it broke something in him. He killed Elena because his love for her had become a political weapon used against him, then spent the Cold War in the unknown regions rather than the Dark Council's games. When the Emperor's host was destroyed, he declared a new empire. One purged of imperial prejudice against alien species, but combined forces tracked him to a space station above Ilum and defeated him. He survived. He was rebuilt with cybernetics. He came back, again and again, because whatever Darth Malgus was made of, it did not stop. Darth Bane. One man looked at the entire history of the Sith, thousands of years of empires, wars, and the same collapse repeating itself endlessly, and concluded they had been making the same mistakes since the beginning. Darth Bane was right. He was also the reason every dark thing that came after him was able to happen. Born Dessel on the mining colony of Apatros around 1,026 years before the Battle of Yavin, he was drafted into the Brotherhood of Darkness and immediately saw it clearly. A weak equal order where the strong were held back by the weak, doomed to fail the same way every Sith order before it had. He studied the holocron of Darth Revan and confirmed his diagnosis. One master, one apprentice. The master embodied power. The apprentice craved it. When the apprentice was ready, they killed the master. Every generation the Sith grew stronger because only the strongest survived. On Ruzon, he manipulated Skare Khan into detonating a thought bomb that destroyed the Brotherhood of Darkness and the Jedi forces fighting them simultaneously. He walked out the last Sith alive, found a 10-year-old girl whose grief had killed a Jedi, and took her as his apprentice, Darth Zana. He then allowed parasitic crustaceans called orbalisks to bond to his skin as armor, painful, effective, and deeply indicative of his priorities. He sought essence transfer as his body aged. Zana had been ready to challenge him years before he realized it. On Ambria they dueled. She struck him down at the moment he tried to transfer his essence. What Bane built lasted 1,000 years. The rule of two passed through a chain of masters and apprentices, each killing the one before, each growing stronger. Until Darth Sidious destroyed the Jedi Order and the Republic in the same generation and raised the Galactic Empire from the ruins. Every atrocity of that era traces back to a miner on Apatros who decided there was a better way to do this. If 14 Sith Lords kept you here through all of it, you belong with us. Subscribe. There is always more.